The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday and we're here at the end of September. I honestly don't know where the time goes, but so thrilled to be here today on this lovely fall Friday. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. And sometimes that can get really interesting, right? We had a very fascinating show yesterday, 4 back-to-back guests. I think that's a record for us for how many guests we've had on a single show that were individual guests. Like sometimes we'll have multiple guests, but 4 separate segments with guests yesterday, and it got very interesting around here, right? We have some updates about some of the things that you guys have written in about yesterday's show, and some things to add to the pile that we're going to get to before the show is over. But again, 360-degree perspective. That means we're not all going to agree. We're all going to have different views, right? That's part of perspective taking, which we all are learning. But we hope that if you're a parent, teacher, practitioner working with an individual on the spectrum and wanting to get to more practice, more progress, and you want to do it efficiently, it's morning, isn't it? More efficiently and more effectively, then we're hoping that we'll be able to connect you with some answers, or quite possibly some more questions and some more resources to get those questions answered. If you're an individual on the autism spectrum, we're hoping that likewise we'll be able to connect you with resources to things that help you to do the things that you want to do in your life. I always like to start out the show by saying I'm not an expert in autism. My perspective, the place that I get to see things from, is as a parent. My child was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he's now 10, and he is the light of my life, except when he's not, right? Because, you know, he's a wonderful, luscious boy. I refrained from saying little boy because that would have driven him crazy. And he is very typical in his ability to drive his mother slightly crazy. And that's a wonderful thing, right? But I fully recognize that as a parent, my focus has been helping my child to access the world. And that in the early days of him having autism, I did view it as a disability. My fear was in there. It has taken me this long in the journey to see all of the things that he is different from, his ability to blossom as a differently abled person. We had the benefit of the very best of ABA therapy here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And so because of that, the more disabling aspects of his particular kind of autism have greatly diminished. We continue to work on the ones that are still, there are tons of ability to make progress when we're talking about autism. So that's what we're here to talk about. It's meant to be interactive this entire show. Emily's going to show you some of the many ways that you can get in touch with us here. I'm going to remind you that if you go to www.autism-live.com, there are some extra resources there, right? You're going to be able to see the show live when we're live. You'll be able to cycle through, see the most recent show there, or look at a reel of shows that you want to pick from. But you can also go to the white box next to the screen, type away whatever you want to type, hit enter. It shows up here on my screen. You're not paying for that. You don't have to register. There's no login. There's no credit card information exchange. In fact, we have no idea who you are unless you tell us. And if you choose to do that, I have a way of deleting that information before I show it with the public at large, so we keep your anonymity. While you are there on www.autism-live.com, I want to remind you there are lots of things there to look at, including our blog, which I'm trying to be better about updating more often. And if you visit us on Facebook, we appreciate your likes. We appreciate you sharing our page on Facebook and letting other people know about what we do here and giving them a voice here. We think that that's a wonderful thing to do. And while you are on the Facebook page, it's a great opportunity for you to sign up for our free newsletter. It's only a one-pager. It comes out once a month at the top of the month, and it's full of exciting information. And very soon, it's going to be including ways that you can participate for lots of free stuff that we're giving away in the holidays. Speaking of free stuff, I have to remind you here at the top of the show that we are going to be participating in a study, Autism Live, and we have a few more Rokus to give away. If you are interested in having a free Roku and watching some programming having to do with autism, including Autism Live, but some other programs as well on Roku, you need to write us immediately, because I would like to get the rest of these out the door by the end of today. And let us know that you would be willing to participate in a focus group, and we will send you a free Roku to do that. Now, if you already have a Roku, or if you're not interested in getting the free Roku, but you want to participate in the study because you'd like to talk about what you're seeing on the show and how you feel about it, we also have room for people to participate in the study not on Roku or who already have Rokus. So either way, write in and let us know. Emily will put the address up on the screen of where you can write to us and participate with us. This is a great way for you to be have access to even more shows about autism besides Autism Live, because there are others, and we love them. And we're all part of a big community, and everybody's got things to say, right? You'll find that they have different focuses, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But participate. We want to hear from you. It's an independent group that'll be conducting the study, and we hope that you'll participate. And you might want a free Roku for it. We've only got a few of those left, so write in right now. Okay. We like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Yes, that's right, the jargon du jour. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make sense of it within our world by giving an actual definition and then giving a working definition, something that makes sense to those of us who did not go to college to get a degree in psychology. And we're just moving through our lives when autism decided to drop in for a visit. We need to make friends with the jargon because it makes us more effective and more efficient. I admit that I did not feel that way in the beginning. So if you're not quite there, I welcome you. But I got there eventually and saw how much better my world worked and how much more help I could get access to for my son when I found out what these things mean. Okay, so today's term, we're talking about oral motor skills. Oral motor skills. So our actual definition, oral motor skills refer to the movement of the muscles of the face. This includes muscle tone, muscle strength, range of motion, speed, coordination, and disassociation. All right, if you're wondering what, most of that makes sense, but not the disassociation for most of us. Disassociation is being able to isolate the tongue or isolate, doing an upper lip thing, being able to move your lower lip, your upper lip, your tongue separate from each other. Okay, so our working definition of oral motor skills, the use of the mouth, such as sucking, blowing, chewing, these skills are also useful for feeding and communicating. And this is where we really need to be focusing on oral motor skills. It would be all too easy to get focused on the idea that you want your child to be speaking and producing sound and communicating with you, right? Not a bad thing to be worried about at all. But within the realm of those things, we want to make sure that we're strengthening oral motor skills, because there's nothing worse than getting a child to the point where they want to communicate and they're working through whatever it is that whatever obstacle that they have, so that they're making sound and they're saying cookie because they want the cookie, but it comes out because they don't have the oral motor, those muscles don't have the strength to make the sounds. And so the child is working so hard to say it, but they don't get the reward because the person stands there and says, I don't know what you're saying, honey. That is the single most frustrating moment that anyone could arrive upon. So we work on those oral motor skills to set them up for success so that indeed that they can, in that moment, be understood enough so that it's reinforcing enough that they'll work that much harder to be able to do it the next time. Also, in terms of feeding, what we see with a lot of our kids is that if the oral motor isn't there, it makes it very difficult to chew. It makes it very difficult to be able to use a spoon and suck the soup off of a spoon, right? So we want to make sure that those oral motor skills are being worked on, and it kind of feeds upon itself. If we get the oral motor skills there, then it becomes easier to chew. So the child does that more, right? So the feeding improves and the chewing develops the muscles so that it's easier for them to speak, and it becomes this big snowball that becomes a big deal. So we want to make sure that that snowball is going in the right direction, snowballing into great skills instead of snowballing into a place where the child is just going to be throwing tantrums and not eating properly and not communicating, right? So oral motor skills can be very important. Now, they can be very fun to work on. We can make it fun. I love some of the things on, the show Minute to Win It that I don't think it's on anymore. But one of the things I loved was that they took a cookie, put it on people's foreheads, had them lay back, and they had to move their face around to get the cookie around to their mouth. So, that can be really hard to do with little kids, but there are so many things. There are so many great exercises that are available, even with very little kids, to get them to find it exciting and to have it be a game. Right now, my son is finally a 10 at the age where he and I have a blast doing a bunch of different tongue twisters. And it's part of our daily ritual now. And I can't tell you how exciting that is to me. But for years, I struggled because I thought, how do you work on these things without doing tongue twisters? And thank goodness we had great speech and language therapists and some great OTs that helped us, and some great therapists that helped us along the way to be able to put these things together, because I was a little bit lost. So oral motor skills, very important for almost all of our kids. All right, moving on to our question of the day. And here we have it, because we're going to get you some ideas for how people are getting this done. What creative ways are you working on oral motor skills? I love to hear different parents and different practitioners talk about, here is the thing that we do to do this. It's fascinating to me, all the different ways. There was somebody who had told me recently, I'd always heard about doing finger paints with pudding for kids who can have those ingredients that are in pudding. It's a great way to start early with kids, especially kids who tend to put their fingers in the mouth. You want to be very careful that you're not setting up circumstances where sometimes it's pudding and sometimes it's paint for a child who doesn't understand the difference, right? But there was a mom who talked about the fact that she was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Did the finger paints with chocolate pudding so that they made this beautiful picture, right? So we're working on the fine motor skills there. The child was also somebody who had sensory issues with getting their hands dirty. And so they were really reticent, but mom would dip the finger in the pudding and then suck it off and go, and make a big deal. And then the child tried it. So they were also working on the whole sucking of sucking their fingers after they did this, working on all those skills at once. Again, you have to be cautious, because if somebody else is going to be doing paint with them, the child's going to be sticking their finger in their mouth, right? So being very specific to not be working on finger paints with paint if you're going to be doing the chocolate pudding. But how creative. I just love when people are, so write in and tell us the creative ways that you're working on oral motor, and we'll share them a little bit later on in the show. And that way we can all glean some new ideas. All right, we always have a topic of the week. Our topic this week, if you haven't guessed it already, building motor skills. All the different ways that we can do this. I think there are a lot of different things that we tend to not allow to be uppermost in our mind, that they're just kind of shadowy things in the background. A lot of parents early on, especially when they're all in and like, we're going to get our child as much help as we can, children are concerned about those social skills, which are very important, those language skills, very, very important. But a lot of times we, and myself included, I have been guilty of this, we tend to not put as much focus and attention on the building motor skills, when in fact, and I'm living this now, because for a lot of years, people were saying to me, we got to focus a little bit more on some of the sports stuff. And I said, no, we really don't. I'm not that kind of a parent. I'm not going to be that kind of a mom. It just isn't as important to me. And here we are, 5th grade. And what's my biggest problem? Lunchtime and recess, because all the boys are playing sports and my child is behind. Okay, well, I was wrong. And I let everybody know that and remind you, we got to put this a little bit higher, because especially for the boys, but not entirely, not a problem for the girls. A lot of what happens in those in-between years, the way that kids access and make friends and are social with each other, is doing motor skills. So, and that's just the gross motor stuff, not to mention the fine motor stuff that allows them to be able to write, and the oral motor that, as we just talked about, allows them to eat and to communicate, and the visual motor that allows for all of it to happen. So these are important skills, and we need to not minimize them, myself included on this. So we're going to be continue to talk about that today, and some of the different things that we have going on today. We have a really great show for you today. Dr. Adel will be with us in just a few minutes, and we call that Real Progress with Dr. Adel, because she helps us to get down to the nitty-gritty of here is what we can do to move that dial a little bit. We always have a funding tip for you on Friday, very funding Fridays, right? It's an important part of this journey. And then in the second hour, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox will join us for Science Beat. And during Dr. Adel Nadowski's segment and Dr. Tarbox's segment, it's a great opportunity for you guys to be asking your questions. And you can get answers in real time. So we are going to take a break and be back after these messages. Stick with us.
Hey guys, for the month of September, I figured I'd show you guys how to make a task completion chart to help your kids get through the hardest parts of the day. Parents have been writing into our host, Shannon Penrod, the hardest parts of the day are waking up in the morning, after school, and getting ready for bed. Please keep in mind you can always modify the task completion chart to focus on the skills that your family needs most. The template we'll be using today to make the task completion chart you can find at facebook.com/autism-live. All right, let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are the template, cardstock, scissors, hole puncher, glue, pipe cleaner, Velcro, and photos or images. We find it more reinforcing for kids if you use images of themselves doing the tasks that you're trying to get them to complete. So what I have here to start off are photos of myself doing all the tasks that we're going to add to our task completion chart today. The first step you're going to be doing is printing the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have it here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim at the top. We don't need that, that's just totally excess. Now that I trim my 3 templates, I'm going to label each one with a different part of the day that we're focusing on, such as waking up, after school, and getting ready for bed. Now that I finished labeling the templates with the appropriate time of the day, I'm going to attach the photos that go with it. For bedtime, the tasks I chose were getting ready for school, putting away toys, putting on pajamas, and brushing teeth. Now repeat this for all the rest of the day. Now that I've added the photos to the template, I am taking this along with my heavy cardstock to hold all my tokens. I'm going to line them up and make 3 hole punches. I'm going to take this pipe cleaner and attach the pages together with it. We're almost done putting this together. Next, I'm going to take my Velcro. I'm going to put them underneath each picture. And then I'm going to add 4 on the very edge too. Now that I've attached the rough side of the Velcro to the template, now I'm going to take the softer side and add these to the tokens. You can use whatever you want for the tokens, whatever your child finds reinforcing. They could be stickers, images, spacemen, Pokemon, whatever they like. Before you use your task completion chart, it's really important that you do a preference assessment to see what your child finds reinforcing that day. Once you have that established, then you can tell them the rule for how this task completion chart works. So every time they get one of their tasks completed, they add a token to it. And the way the task completion chart functions is like a token economy. So after they put a token under each one of these tasks, they can trade it in for their reinforcer for the day. Now that you've made your task completion chart, hopefully your child will be able to use it on a daily basis and help them through those difficult times of the day. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with our very special guest, Dr. Adel Nadowski. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We call this Real Progress with Dr. Nadowski, Dr. Adel, because you help us to be able to sort through, when there's something going on, what are the steps that we need to take to do something about it. So I want to start right out the gate with a question. Somebody wrote in, how do I get a diagnosis? What kind of doctor should I see?
Very, very good question, and I wish that I could tell you this is the doctor you should see, but the truth is that a lot of people out there who have a certain title maybe don't have a lot of experience with autism. So for me to say go to a clinical psychologist, that could work a lot of the time, unless you're going to one who rarely has seen cases of autism. So you really want to go to someone who's an expert and who's seen many different cases of autism and is very good at detecting it. So my first suggestion is to go to a parent group like FEAT, somewhere in your region or area, and talk to the other families and find out who's the best person in this town to go to for diagnosis, and then go that route. It could be a clinical psychologist, it could be a pediatrician, it could be a neurologist. We never know. So that would be my best solution there.
Yeah, and there are also places that specialize in assessment. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders has an assessment center that people can go to. But it can be a very dicey thing figuring out who it is, and I think that's a great suggestion. FEAT is a great suggestion. TACA groups are another place that you can go. And I would also add to it, ask a couple of different parents so that you're not just taking one person's opinion.
Yeah, exactly. You just want to make sure that this is someone who's very familiar with the diagnosis. So that's my suggestion.
Absolutely. Great suggestion. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back and ask more questions of Dr. Nadowski, so stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Adel Nadowski, and you hold many different titles. So let's talk about what some of your titles are, because I can't even keep track of them. So throw some at us.
All right. Well, I'm one of the senior content contributors to Skills.
Yes.
Worked on it for many years.
And you were one of the co-designers, co-writers of Skills,
Exactly,
correct? Yes.
yeah. And now that it's something that's out there and people are using, I am the Director of Dissemination and Research.
Wonderful.
So trying to get the word out as much as possible about Skills through research and through speaking events.
And we talk about Skills from time to time here on the show because I'm a big fan of it. And of course, I'm a big fan of yours as well. I make
you.
no
I'm
bones
a big fan
about
of
that.
yours, too.
Well, that's a nice thing. But I use Skills on a regular basis with my child. And for people who are just tuning in or new to the program, it's an online tool
Right.
To help with any child who is delayed. Like I was going to say, to help with autism, but the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter what your child's diagnosis is. If your child is delayed, this is a tool that will help you to get them caught up.
That's exactly right.
Love that.
Yep. It's pretty cool.
And it would be lovely if it only did that, right? That would be remarkable, but it does ever so much more than that, including it assesses your child, gives
Right.
you a true snapshot of where your child is in this moment in time.
Right, because if we know that the child is delayed, what's our goal? Get them caught up, right, to where they should be. So how do we know what to teach? A lot of people are not that familiar with what's even age appropriate or prerequisites or those kind of things. So that's where the assessment helps to identify all the needs. And then the lessons themselves that are linked directly to the results of that assessment provide the other information on what to teach and the prereqs and stuff.
Yeah, so once you've done the assessment, you've answered the questions, you not only get this beautiful, and it comes in many different ways that you can look at it visually so that it makes sense to you. And I'm a visual person, so I appreciate that. Oh, this is where his receptive language is. Oh, this is where his expressive language is. On a graph where I go, oh, the green is higher on this one than that one. Yay, I can understand that. But then it shows me, so here are the pool of lessons that would be advisable for your child at this age and at this skill level.
Exactly.
Which is amazing because so often parents sit at the IEP meeting and they go, here are the goals that are appropriate for your child. And you go, how would I know that?
Right.
Except that now with Skills, I actually know that.
Yeah.
I actually know whether these goals are appropriate or not.
And there are IEP goals as well in the skills system that parents can bring to the table if they want to participate in that way in their IEP meetings.
Yes, because how many of you have written in and said, I really wish they were working on X, Y, or Z with my child at school. And you feel like, what do I need to do to get them to do that? And we can talk about all these different things that you can do to cajole them to do it. But if you come in with the goal written in IEP language and say, I would like this added to the IEP as a member of the, as a member of the team, I think that this is what's advisable, they really don't have a lot of room to say no.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases they'll probably be more than open to it. Unless for some reason the goal that you provide is 5 steps ahead of where they are, and they won't be able to do that until they do these other goals first.
In which case it opens another conversation where they go, we need to do this, this, and this first, but at least you know you're moving towards that goal.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. And of course there's a whole other part of it that's attached to Skills, because there's this huge part that's growing skills, but there's another part that helps you to write a behavior intervention plan to diminish skills that are challenging.
Not skills.
Skills, behavior. Challenging behavior.
Yeah.
Yes, because well, and sometimes I look at my son and I go, "Oh, you're very skillful at doing that, right?" But it's the challenging behaviors that we want to diminish,
right?
And it gives us the step-by-step. Yesterday, we had Angela Persicki with us, a board-certified behavior analyst, and somebody wrote in and said that they had been at their IEP meeting yesterday, and that they had asked for a BFA on a behavior, and that the autism expert at the IEP said, well, we can't do a BFA on that behavior because we'll never find out what the reason for that behavior is, so there's no point doing it, because that's just autism.
You mean FBA?
FBA. What did I say?
BFA. It's okay.
It's
I just don't want
Friday.
to confuse the viewers.
No, let's not confuse the viewers because I'm confusing enough. An FBA.
Right.
I always joke that I call it the FBI in my head. It's like sending the FBI out to figure out why the behavior is happening. But yes, an FBA. Sorry,
They
BFA.
just said there's no way of knowing the reason for the behavior.
Because they were talking about things like hand flapping and stuff like that. They said, oh, that's just autism. So we can't do an FBA on that. That's just autism.
Yeah.
And the frustration of the parent, and this is a perfect example of if you needed to, there's the BIP builder in skills. You're empowered as a parent that if you had somebody do the FBA, find out what the function of the behavior is, you could, as the parent, come up with a behavior intervention plan and just come in and say, here, guys, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I kind of get what that person was saying, which is that if it turns out that type of behavior is maintained just by automatic reinforcement, meaning there's no social consequences that are reinforcing that behavior. It's just doing the behavior itself is self-stimulating enough or enjoyable enough that they're just going to keep doing it. And we don't know exactly why it's so enjoyable. We don't know if it's the kinesthetic part about it, the visual, the auditory, whatever. There really is not an FBA yet to figure out those.
Right.
But that aside, just knowing that that's the function, that it's automatic, there are a lot of different treatment components that have already been shown through science that can be effective in treating that function.
Exactly. And we did talk about that a little bit about, we may never know the exact reason why the child does this.
Why they enjoy that.
But knowing
what's enjoyable about
knowing that it's because there's something about it that's automatically reinforcing as opposed to this being something to escape something.
Or,
leads where you take the intervention to.
Yeah.
And that they shouldn't just be dismissing, saying and I love that Angela brought up, okay, if that's what they're saying, what's their intervention plan? That we're not just saying, well, we're going to leave it alone.
Right, yeah.
Frustrating. But skills empowers us to be able to figure some of these things out for ourselves and know what's appropriate.
And not yet available to the public, but hopefully coming out in a new version of skills will be an indirect functional behavioral assessment as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So being able to do part of the FBA on your own.
It's already been developed, but we're in a beta testing phase right now. So we're actually doing research to show that it can hopefully be valid and lead to the correct function.
Great.
So.
Pretty remarkable. Well, having said all of that, we had a question that came in from somebody saying, my daughter is nonverbal, and she, I'm not sure the sentence, but so I'm going to read it as she wrote it. My daughter is nonverbal, bad communicates through signs and iPad app. She has significant delay in her academics. What should I do? ABA resources are very limited here. She went on to write, I'm also very concerned about her vocal verbal behavior. She can make sounds and some word approximations.
Okay.
So
there's a lot of things going on in that interaction there, or that question.
Yeah.
I heard concerns about she doesn't have very great academic skills. I wouldn't worry about those right now because given that she's not really vocal verbal and she's having to communicate other ways, I would focus more on her communication and her language and teaching her more functional things that will help her get along in her daily routine. So I wouldn't worry right now so much about the academics. Now I understand that ABA is not something that you have a lot of access to. However, we know that ABA is effective for teaching all the things that your daughter needs. So my suggestion to you would be that you, of course, continue to try to get as much ABA services as you can. It's now funded through insurance in a lot of states and things like that. But also maybe educate yourself or gather a team of friends, family members, people from church, wherever you can get them, who might be interested in helping, and get them trained, and they can start implementing an ABA program. To get trained, you can go online to Institute for Behavioral Training, and there you can take e-learning modules which will teach you the steps of how to implement ABA procedures, and then after that you're going to need a curriculum, and you're going to need to know what from that curriculum your daughter actually needs to learn, and that's where skills can also help. So you'll do the assessment, and then you'll identify some things. And your daughter can continue to use sign language. I think that's awesome that she's communicating through iPad and sign. And with ABA, you can help her to develop that repertoire. If you want to develop the vocal responding, there's lessons and skills as well for teaching you how to do that. So Those are my suggestions.
Yeah. Another way in which skills empowers parents, because I long for the day, and I pray for and hope for and visualize the day in which all children have equal access to ABA, and that parents are able to say, oh, I got a diagnosis of autism yesterday when my child was 18 months, and the very next day they signed me up for 40 hours of ABA therapy, and it's being paid for by my insurance. I visualize that on a
How cool
daily.
would that be if that was just the standard thing? That
I know. I get chills every
just
time I
like,
think about it.
Oh, got the diagnosis? Okay, now
Right.
you're going here. Everything's
Right, and it's all
ready to go.
It's all ready to go,
That would be
and you know, you have a doctor who's looking at your child to make sure that they're healthy, and all those things are in place. Until we can get to that day, we can't just let children fall between the cracks. And I've said before, and I'll say again, you know, the first time that I met Dr. Nadowski was on a day when skills was being unveiled to a small group of people. I still can't figure out how I got to be lucky and be in that room. But I remember looking up on the screen, and as they talked about it, and I really saw a miracle unfolding, because it gave access to people who hadn't had access before.
Right.
That I thought, oh my goodness, that means that I can talk to any parent anywhere in the world that has an interconnection and say, if you're willing to work, you know, and it is a lot of work. Let's not anybody, you know, mince words there. But if you're willing to work, you have access to the same tools that helped me get my child back. I just think that that's a miraculous thing, and you were, you know, one of the co-creators of that, which is part of the reason why I'm such a big fan of yours.
You've made me just think of one other thing too, which
Yes?
is that it is a lot of work, and some people may not even have the time to put in that work. Or I personally think it's hard to be a parent and your child's teacher or therapist at the same time. I don't know how people can wear all those hats. So another option to you is a workshop model. So if you don't have a BCBA in your area, and that's why you're not getting your ABA, and funds are not the issue for you, CARD, the Center for Autism-Related Disorders, has a workshop program as well, and they will basically fly out supervisors to any area, regardless if we have a CARD office in that location or not, and those people will train everybody on how to do the therapy. And you can, in that case, you would hire your own therapist. Some families have done this by simply putting up flyers around universities saying, would you be interested in working with a child with autism? And they'll call you up and you pay them yourself. But the CARD workshop supervisor trains them on how to implement everything.
And I would say to you, a lot of people feel overwhelmed by that, but I want you to keep in mind that Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who will be joining us in the next hour, that's how he got into the field of autism, was that he was a history major on a college campus, saw a flyer that said, would you be interested in working with a child on the autism spectrum? It was a mom who had done exactly this how many years ago, and she hired, Dr. Tarbox was one of the people that she hired, began to train him to work with his child. And it was so exciting to him that that's now the field that he is in and at the top of.
Yeah.
So you never know what incredible person you will be. You know, I think about that mom. I'd love to have that mom on the show and thank her for being a pioneer and have created such an environment that somebody like Dr. Tarbox would find his passion in life. You know, I mean, it's really amazing. And I also want to say too that there are lots of families. We show a video from time to time of a family, Maddie. That her family, they did this, but they did it all with volunteers. So it isn't always that you have to pay people. They got people from their church. We've heard of people doing this with sororities. If they live in a college town, that a sorority adopts the family, and all the sorority sisters learn ABA, because it's a great skill. It's a great job skill for them. So, and it's also an amazing thing to make a difference in a child's life. So lots of different ways in which you can go about this. And you won't be the first person. You don't have to invent the wheel, which is also refreshing. But the tools are available to you, and that's the really good news. There are ways of getting it done. No matter what you do, even if it's that you have therapists come directly to your house, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Get ready, you know, get that all in your mind, get that little suit on your head going, I'm going to work. And it's going to take a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. All right, we're going to take another break before I get all emotional. and
You
go
already
off.
are.
It's
What do you
Friday,
say?
and you know, so that's it. Anyway, we're going to take a break and we'll come back more. We have a question that Dr. Nadowski is going to answer, so stick with us.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity of
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Adel Nadowski, and she is one of the co-creators of the Skills program. We've been talking a little bit about that, and we had a question that came in because our topic this week is about teaching motor skills,
Right.
Advancing motor skills, and somebody wrote in and said, I'm completely lost. I have no idea how to work on motor skills with my child. And I thought that would be a great question for you. So what would you recommend in working on motor skills?
When working on motor skills, obviously first you need to know the progression of motor skills and kind of how children develop. So for example, this is happening less, but it used to be kids would crawl before they would walk and so on. So make sure all the prerequisites are in place. If you're teaching someone to be a good runner, they need to be able to be a good walker. They need to be able to walk and stand well before they can climb stairs, all of those. So try to think about what are the components of the motor skill you're trying to teach. In addition to that, sometimes motor skills might have steps. So for example, let's say if you were teaching stairs and climbing, there's a lot involved of moving each limb, maybe holding onto a rail, maybe starting in steps of putting one foot on a step and then the second foot on the same step before moving to alternating feet. And so again, this is where skills can help you because all of the development of motor skills is broken up and it teaches like the easiest first and then moves to the next. Same thing with throwing skills, catching skills. All of these kids are going to be catching bigger balls at first before they move to smaller balls. They're going to be using both hands at first before they use one. They're going to roll before they're going to actually throw and things like that. And if you have to, you might have to actually shape each behavior that's in the chain, like for example with the walking up the stairs. So help the child, assist them through like, 90% of whatever the behavior is at first. So you might have to guide them. A lot of times modeling helps as well. So if you're trying to teach a child how to do a certain motor skill, you can model that skill for them and use the instruction, do this, along with while you're modeling it. But the ultimate goal is for them to be able to engage in the behavior in the naturalistic settings in which they normally would. So they shouldn't have to be told or whatever to engage in a motor behavior or always for you to say, do this to get them to do a motor behavior. It should just happen in the natural context. So initially, yes, you'll be providing those kinds of instructions. You'll be providing physical guidance, which you're going to want to fade out. And then eventually you're going to bring in the natural context of the situation to try to get that to control the behavior, fade out yourself and all of your prompts and get it just under the control of those natural contingencies.
And again,
it's kind of confusing, I know.
Well, it sounds overwhelming because I start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go to the library and get a book about what are the steps of,
Right.
or I'm going to have to sit there with a video camera and videotape my child and go, okay, the first thing, or videotape somebody else and try to figure out what are the steps to teach teach whatever skill it is, but the truth is I don't have to do any of that because it's all been done for me on skills.
Yeah, I know. So it's like basically doing a motor assessment, and the assessment is so eye-opening in and of itself because the assessment kind of is like based on milestones and ask, can your child do this, can they do this, can they do this, and half the things on the list you never even really thought of before because they're not necessarily like the most mature version of the motor skill.
Yeah.
They're like the motor skill broken down into the more immature phase or whatever. But a lot of times you start there and then you build up.
Yeah.
You know?
And the truth is that skills, you address 4 different areas of motor skills that we've actually been talking about this week: gross motor, fine motor, visual motor, and oral motor. And you have curriculum for each one of those areas. You have lessons for each area and teaching tips for each area. So depending on where it is you're concerned about for motor skills, it's
and for each of those, it's all broken up by age. So like, for example, if the target is teaching the child to catch a ball, then it's going to say, from 2 and 3 years of age they can do this, from 3 to 4 they can do that, all the way up to like 8 or something. And it's literally like whether they can catch with 2 hands, 1 hand, from how many feet, the size of the ball. When we're throwing, is it like, how much is your body twisting at the same time and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
it's very helpful because a lot of times we get caught up in that my child isn't doing what they should be doing. And it's very hard to look at a baseball field and know how old everybody is, right? Just the other day when we were at Disneyland, I saw a child on the tram, 2 trams ahead of me, who it looked like a very small baby that we went by the Disney Halloween exhibit, and he went, oh, and he pointed at it, and then he touched his daddy's face and pointed, waited until his dad could see it, looked at it too, then looked back at his dad and said, oh, like, did you see it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember watching it and saying to my husband, I have to know how old that child is.
Did you walk over?
I did. I walked over and I said, how old is this child? And he said, oh, he's 2. And I said, oh, he's so cute. He must have thought I was a crazy person. But I wanted to know because my child didn't do that.
Yeah, of course.
And it looked like this child was like a 1-year-old,
right.
Maybe like, 1.5. And it was so amazing. I was sitting there and I was like, look at that. He's pointing. Look at that. That's joint attention. Look at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was so exciting to me to see. And I thought, I just have to know how old. But when you're watching kids on a baseball field and you see the kid that picks up the grounder and throws it and catches the ball and does all these things, and you think, oh, my kid isn't doing that. But sometimes that kid is just small and he's 2 years older than your child.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's really true. My son's really small for his age. So.
And so, being able to look at what those milestones are and know, oh, okay, my child is 6. It isn't really typical that he could do X, Y, and Z at this age is freeing.
Yeah.
And being able to look and say, but he should be able to do this, so we have to work on that. That's
it's
possible.
even little things like, standing on one leg. At a certain age, they're going to do it literally for like half a second, and that's all they can do. And at another time, they can do it like for as long as they need to or whatever. Or they'll do it like while holding on to something. Or, how many hops can they do on one leg? Well, at first, it's going to be like 1, and then it's going to be many more. And so you just don't really know until you see what is expected.
Yeah.
I was even remembering as we're talking about like an assessment I looked at for motor skills, and it literally said like 1-year-olds chuck the ball. That's what they called it, chuck. Because it's just like, you know what I mean?
Right.
There's no like, you don't take your arm back. There's no follow through.
Right.
There's no extended arm.
Yes.
But then like at another age, I don't remember what it is, it starts to develop each one of those steps.
Okay.
So.
It really breaks it down.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible. And once it's broken down and you see where your child is, then you know where to start working and you know what to work on. And that's when things get interesting.
And don't be afraid to use prompts. Like, so, for example, like, I don't know if rolling isn't the best example, but I did this with my own infants. I was teaching them how to roll. And so I actually put them on like a slanted pillow. Mm-hmm. And then I had like an object they really wanted, and I was going like this so they would try to grab for it, and then they would kind of just like almost accidentally roll a little, and then the slant became less and less. So it's like you're fading out these physical kind of prompts. And then eventually they were just rolling, and maybe it was 1 roll at first. And it was funny, my daughter used to actually literally roll like across a room. I didn't try to teach her that, by the way. She just figured out if I want to be over there, I could roll this whole way. She'd roll across a room to get somewhere.
Jen was the same way. He didn't want to crawl. He wanted to roll everywhere. I pictured him rolling away to college.
Yeah. So, I mean, just remember that when you're teaching any motor skill, that you're going to have all these prompts initially, whether they be like, you know, ways you're setting up the environment, like in my case with the pillows and everything else, or like if you're teaching the child, you know, to cut with scissors or something, you're going to actually do hand-over-hand placement of how they put their hands appropriately on the scissors or with the pencil, the tripod grasp. You're going to use modeling, stuff like, you know, setting a pencil down and saying, do this, and just doing that over and over again, do this, you know. And then
rewarding when you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of modeling, a lot of physical guidance and prompting and fading it out.
And opportunities to do it over and over and over again. Fascinating. But we can get these things done, and that's the message for the day. Is that we can teach all of these lessons. We just have to be very patient and very diligent, and it's some work. But and we have to make it rewarding for them and rewarding for us. Otherwise, we won't do it for very long. Very important. Well, I thank you so much for being here. We won't see you next week. We're off next week, but we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up. Didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? Well, what Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job! Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know. In most manuals, you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new Skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she has just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We had a very exciting show yesterday, as I mentioned, 4 different guests, and we had some responses to some of the different things that guests were here and talked about. One of the things that we talked about yesterday, there's some really important legislation that is happening in California, and we had Julie Kornack, a policy analyst, with us to talk about some of the different bills and how you can get involved with those bills. We have the link right now on our Facebook page. There's a way that the bills, there are 6 bills, and they are sitting on Governor Jerry Brown's desk right now waiting to be signed. If he doesn't sign them, all the work is for naught. So we really want to encourage Governor Brown to sign them. Julie went through some of the different bills. They have to do with the regional center being more aware and having materials to work with individuals who are not English speakers or their English second language. And that's a really important bill. There is the self-determination bill, and we had a couple of people write in and ask us to please let all of you know how important it is. It's SB 468, the self-determination bill. We are going to have some people from the Autism Society of Los Angeles with us on Tuesday to talk more about this. We're hoping that by that point we'll just be celebrating the passage. This is very important to families. It gives them the opportunity to have more control over where their funding dollars go, what types of therapy. It's just going to grant more access to more people to get the therapies that they actually need. So that's SB 468. And we really wanted to make known, because several people wrote in and said, please, can you let it be known that the Autism Society of Los Angeles has worked really tirelessly on this bill. They sponsored it, and they really, we want to thank them for having done that. This is a really important bill. So many different things. And of course, don't forget also that the telehealth bill is included in that set of 6 as well. You can talk to Governor Jerry Brown in a very easy way. You can go to our Facebook. There is a link there that it says Governor Jerry Brown, and make sure that you click on all the links. You can get to Autism Speaks has a really easy way that you can fill in blanks to, there's a form letter that you could just send that, or you can fill in fields that say what you want to say so that you can make it really personalized. But please, the more people who speak out on this, the more likely that the governor will listen. I also want to remind all of you that Governor Brown has said that being fiscally responsible is the most important thing to him. So make sure that you make the case that all of these bills happen to be very fiscally responsible. None of them is going to cost extra money. In fact, they are going to reduce money spent while they're going to make it possible for more people to get more access in more convenient ways. So please make your voice heard towards Jerry Brown. Now, in addition to that, we had Matt Asner from Autism Speaks on the show yesterday, and he was talking about the controversy about the Disney Guest Assistance Pass. We know that earlier in the week, we let you know Disney put out a press release saying that they have always been very mindful of people with disabilities, that they were very cautious, that they are being very cautious about changing their guest assistance policy, and that they consulted with many groups. The only group that they specified, though, the only one that they gave a name, was Autism Speaks. And a lot of people have been very upset. There's been a lot said in this last week. There's been a firestorm for Autism Speaks about having participated in what looks like, we're not even sure yet what it is, but what's been leaked does not look like it's going to work with individuals on the autism spectrum. And so there was a lot of shock, like how could Autism Speaks have supported this? Well, Matt was here to set the record straight, and he said, we did not. We said this won't work, this won't work, this won't work. We still don't know what they've decided upon, but we were not consulted in the way that everybody is saying that we were consulted. He talked about a guide for people with cognitive issues that Autism Speaks has been working extensively with for Disneyland. But in terms of helping them to develop their guest assistance pass, all they did were asked questions, and he said, and in most cases, their response was, that won't work. So that was their involvement. While he was talking about it, though, he said, I got to be honest, though, as many people have spoken out about this and been negative about Autism Speaks' part in it without knowing the full truth, he said, I wish that many people would speak out on other subjects. I wish we could take that energy and apply it. We had one viewer in particular who took exception to that and said, I'm completely offended that he suggested parents only get involved when it's for entertainment. I'm involved in what's going on with my son's school district, regional center, and much more. Most of my involvement is at the local level, which is not really going to make huge on the news. Not any less important. The Disney issue is a nationwide issue, and parents are involved because they should be. What they may be doing is wrong. If Disney does not make appropriate accommodations for our kids, it's going to be a losing battle from here on out. Everything Disney does makes buzz. People for the new changes are suggestions that our kids are spoiled and should learn to wait. We need Disney to support our community on this. I completely agree that we need Disney to support our community. I appreciate you saying, the accommodations that we are hearing, that we're not even sure, but what we've heard so far doesn't look like it's going to work, right? We know it's not going to work, those of us who have kids on the autism spectrum, if it's what we've heard, but we don't know. I completely understand what you're saying. I will say, Matt's not here to defend himself, so I will say that having sat across the table with him and speaking to him during the break, Matt knows firsthand how many parents are so involved on a daily basis. I think what he meant was that in numbers, but I agree with you that on a national level, it does create more buzz and that the news picks it up more. But I can assure you that Matt is very aware that there are many parents who are in there slugging away at getting things done for their kids at the local level, and that he would be the first person to say how much he appreciates the fact that parents are doing that, because he himself is one of those parents. So I'm sorry that you took offense at what he said, because that portion of it, I'm 100% sure that he would not have wanted to have offended you in that way, and I know that that's not how he feels. And sorry that touched a space with you, because you're doing a good job, and I know you're doing a good job, and I know that Matt knows that as well. In any case, we love that you write in, and it is something when we can get a bunch of people saying something. I revel in the fact that people are speaking out and saying, Disney, don't turn your backs on us, because they are very visible, and we need people like Disney on our side. They have been before. Disney has said that they will be, that to trust them, we'll be cautious and see. In any case, it's time for us to go to the A word. This is the ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Jack is in preschool at this point, and so let's drop in on his life and see what's happening for him. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. Exciting. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
Jack. Oh, that was okay. Try again. Go over there and walk back to her again. Jack Riley, come back and walk nicely to her. Walk nicely. Oh, yeah, high fives! Yeah! You did it! She's so happy.
So you guys are doing more programs trying to incorporate sister?
Yes, trying to have him tolerate being around her and practicing having them engage in the same activity. For his target right now is 2 minutes, so we're hopefully trying to increase the time. But she's going to be around forever, so we do want him to get used to being around her and accepting that she will get into his stuff every now and then, or all the time. We're going to do nice playing with Lainey, okay? We're going to do it 5 times, all right? All right, so you put on a piece and then Lainey Grace can put one on. Yay! Look, you get your first axe. Good job, buddy. We're going to keep going. That was excellent. Okay, Lainey's turn.
Here you go.
Good job. Okay, Lainey. Okay, I'll help your sister. Yes, a potato head.
Wait, your turn.
Good job. Should we put the ear on Lainey? Purpose of outings that we go on with our kids is to have them get exposure to the community, and we go with them to assist the parents and to model for them how to redirect inappropriate behaviors when they do happen, how to even prompt the kids to interact with other kids, so when they do go out and we're not there, it's a lot easier for them, and it just becomes more natural for the parents and the kids.
Usually I'm pretty on edge at a park when he walks up to a group. I never know what he's going to do. Sometimes it's imagined, and then sometimes he justifies it.
Welcome back. That's the A Word. This is a really amazing series that you have the ability to watch for free on their YouTube channel and drop in on it wherever it's useful to you, whether that's watching from the beginning to see the progress that can be made with a child when they're getting quality ABA therapy, whether it's dropping in on an episode like this one where you see how do you teach a child to play appropriately with a sibling or another child, and seeing what the process is. There are so many different episodes. You can search keywords to figure out which episodes deal with toilet training, which episodes deal with different issues. I think it's a really remarkable series and encourage you to watch it again. They have their own YouTube channel. You can do that. It's always amazing to me as a former teacher and as a parent, the things that we sometimes take for granted that children are just going to learn. And this is all children, right? Whether they're neurotypical or they're on the autism spectrum or they have other delays for other reasons. And I find it fascinating now. It's sort of like the Matrix that once you realize, oh, these are all the things that have to be taught, you can't go back, right? And it's fascinating to me sometimes to be places with parents of kids who are completely neurotypical and how I am shocked sometimes at the fact that they don't realize that there are things that they can teach their children too. Thinking about some good friends that I have that the siblings don't get along and that there's a lot of pushing and shoving and knocking down and hitting and clawing and things going on. And the number of times that I've heard the mom say, I don't know what to do. I just don't understand why they don't get along. And she's tried to punish them into getting along, but there hasn't been a moment where she's stopped everything and said, I'm going to teach how you do that. There is this desire, and please, I do that all the time with my child. I think to myself first, I think, why doesn't he just do this? I want him to just do that. But my next thought now, having been an ABA parent for many years now, is, oh, have I taught that? Have I rewarded that? Have I showed him what the expectation is? Does he have the skills, the prerequisite skills to do that? Are there things that I need to teach him before he'll be able to do that? And then when I get into that mindset, we make progress. But it's very interesting to me to watch parents who don't know about ABA beat their head against a wall and be frustrated. So I love this episode to see they're breaking it down for Jack Riley. This is how you act nicely with your sister. And they're doing it on a time schedule so that every few minutes they're having him do something and then they're reinforcing him for it. And letting him see that, boy, the lights come on and the party happens when you're really nice to your little sister. And, minimizing his ability to do mean things to her when possible, right? And not focusing as much on the punishment of, let's teach him a lesson, right? Which is certainly what I was raised with, right? My mother, may she rest in peace. When my siblings and I would fight, she would say, all right, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes now. Just beat the crud out of each other. Advanced parenting skills. And somebody would end up hurt and crying, and then we would stop fighting, for a period of time because we would be hurt and crying and have to get Band-Aids and whatever, which stopped it for my mother, but it didn't stop the bickering. Bless my mother. Well, she didn't have access to all these ABA tools, but you and I do. So we can teach these things to our children. We can think, have I modeled this? Have I shown what the expectations are? Have I taught this? Have I given opportunities? And have I reinforced the good behavior? If I haven't done all those things, then really, how can I expect? I just thought that the be nice to your sibling fairy was going to come in and bonk him in the head and go poof. And now you're nice to your sister, right? Like sometimes we'll get into that mindset where we just think it's going to happen. This is much more effective doing it this way, thinking it through, thinking what do I have to teach, and then teaching it and rewarding it. Yes, it works. All right, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back with our funding tip of the week. Stick with us.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman from Taka here to do some more cooking. Are you ready? Allergy-friendly fun, and I've got a guest.
I'm Jamie Davis. Yes, I'm her sister.
Today we're all about cooking something really fun and healthy. That's a dessert. We're going to actually use carrots, real carrots, and we're going to talk about how to make the best tasting carrot cake you could ever hope for. So it's really easy. You don't want to buy the carrots that are the baby carrots. Why?
Well, those aren't really carrots. What they do is they take carrots, they mush them all up, they took whatever the carrot looks like, they throw it in a bin, they bleach them, and they process them, and then they have a little machine that makes them into little formed baby carrots. So they're really not born that way.
So this is what a carrot really looks like?
Yeah.
Awesome. Good to know. So I just want to show everybody how to make really simply. We just washed off the carrots. They were really dirty from the farmer's market. And we're going to throw them in to our food processor. So what's good about the food processor is that we can go for a really fine grade. So I'm going to go ahead and add the 3 cups of carrots. Then the next thing I'm going to pull in is our gluten-free, casein-free flours. I'm using a protein-based flour. Bob's Red Mill is great. I also have my flaxseed meal and pure cane sugar, that's organic. I cut it down already, so you don't need to cut it again.
And one of the reasons why we like to use organic sugar is because, once again, most sugars on the market are bleached to make them look perfect.
Yeah, we don't like perfect.
No.
We like ours.
That's why we like each other.
All right, so we've added our baking soda, baking powder, xanthan gum, nutmeg, and salt. Now, again, why we use the gums is that's the ingredient that actually holds the flour together. Regular flour automatically has that gluten. This is the replacement to the gluten. These are the secret ingredients for the cake itself. 3/4 cup of the crushed pineapple is in there. It gives it a beautiful texture and flavor. And now what I'm using is the oil. What are your favorite oils, Jenny?
I like using coconut oil any chance I get. In fact, coconut oil would be excellent in a carrot cake.
What I did was I reserved a little bit of the oil and we placed it in the bottom of that pan so it doesn't stick.
Yep.
But we love the baking stones.
Yes.
Why do we love the baking stones?
Evenly cooks.
Yes.
And easy cleanup.
If you like crispy, you got to get a baking stone. I also feel that they're less toxic. So now I'm going to cook this thing at 350 for about 35 minutes. You really want to get it golden. Let's get it in there. Awesome. So now that we got our cake all done, let's get on with the frosting. Coconut oil, probably the best thing in the world you can eat. It's so good for your brain. One of the best oils that we can use. So I'm going to use 1/3 cup of the coconut oil. And then we're going to do 1 teaspoon of an organic vanilla, Madagascar, and make sure it's alcohol free. And then what we're going to do is add 16 ounces of organic powdered sugar. And we're going to add our 4 to 6 tablespoons of coconut milk. I'm using the whisk version here on the KitchenAid, which will give it a nice mix. All right, so if you get any on the sides, you just come on in with your little spatula, and this makes the best frosting for the cake. So we're almost done whipping it up, and voila! We are talking good stuff right here. We have the best situation for the best birthday cake, especially if you want to deal with something that perhaps has a little less sugar. You've got a great cake that no one will know the difference. I'm not a decorator. I don't like to decorate. I just want to eat it, and I don't care what it looks like. Ask my family. I'm a family with autism. I just want to eat the cake. Are you ready to do this? It can be your birthday. Yay! So to me, this is so good. It's meant to be gooey, as you can see. But what I love about this is a great birthday cake with extra frosting to make your kids happy. A little less sugar and a lot of love. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com, and on Facebook, Facebook.com/autismlive. And then you can reach me and Jamie and get some more ideas from the taco recipe side. So let's have some more cake.
We say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. On Fridays, we like to take a brief moment and talk a little bit about funding. Funding Fridays, we call it. Just want to take a moment to talk to you about the fact that on October 1st, we are all supposed to have access to the exchange to be able to look at what plan we would like to sign up for if we haven't previously gotten insurance. Excuse me. This is going to be very important, and it's going to vary from state to state, but you're going to want to begin to look on October 1st to get an idea of what plans you're eligible for and start to look to see if ABA is covered. Our hope is that some people who have not had access before to ABA are going to begin to gain access on January 1st, but it's going to require you looking at those exchanges. We're not going to ask you to do this by yourself. We're going to have Julie Cornack come back with us next week and talk more about it, but I want to start to prime the pump here, because for those of you who have not had insurance, or if your insurance is going to be changing on January 1st, you really are going to need to look. You're going to get a choice between 3 different plans, and they're not going to be equal and even, and some of them are going to provide for services for ABA and some are not. So you're going to, and supposedly we're told that it's going to clearly tell you what they're going to cost. So we look forward to that next Tuesday. We will have Julie Cornack with us at some point next week to talk about all of that, but get yourself ready. I would encourage you, there's a great deal of discussion online and in the news, but it's all speculation until we're able to look at that exchange next Tuesday. But we'll keep that in mind, because it might make the difference for you and your family getting access to ABA, and that would be a good thing. We're going to come right back in just a moment after these messages with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Stick with us. What do you think about the prevalence of autism, the rising number of prevalence, and what are your thoughts on what this world is going to be like with so many individuals on the autism spectrum?
I think a lot of the increase is just increased detection on the milder spectrum, but I think there is some severe autism that's increased. Older parents having children would be one factor. You know, lack of vitamins, like the B vitamins prior to pregnancy, chemical insults, taking prescription drugs in the first trimester. There's a whole lot of little insults like this that can interact with susceptible genetics. I work in a technical field, and there's mild autism and Asperger's and dyslexics all over it. One of the best millwrights in the feedlot industry is severe dyslexic. He's one of the best millwrights that there is, and that builds complicated feed mills. And the thing that worries me is they've taken so many of the hands-on classes out of the school: cooking, sewing, woodworking, metalworking, auto shop. There's a lot of kids that are kind of different. They make great mechanics, and we have a shortage of mechanics right now. We have a shortage of engineers. I'm getting concerned that there's some smart kids that are kind of different, kind of getting a handicap label. Now, where the diagnosis really makes a difference is later on in life with their relationships. And the wife is wondering why the husband is not very demonstrative and, you know, not very lovey-dovey and emotional. And this is where it getting a diagnosis can really help their marriage, because then the wife understands. See, that's where that kind of, when it comes to relationships, that's where the diagnosis can really, really make a difference. I think one of the problems today is sort of a more social society today. You know, the kid that was a little bit not too social before, he'd be out there in the auto mechanic shop getting along great with the shop teacher, and they got rid of that kind of stuff. You see, I'm in a weird situation where I walk back and forth between the autism world and the sort of metalworking and cattle working kind of world. And there's farmers that I know that are on the spectrum, and they're doing great in farming.
So maybe it's not that these kids actually do have a diagnosis then, but maybe the prevalence was there before?
Well, I think on the mild end, I think the prevalence is probably there. But I think there's severe autism that has increased. There's way too much sugar in the diet. We also have an omega-3 deficient diet in this country. We're not getting enough omega-3s. I think let's go back to the alternative things, fish oil supplements, some of the B vitamins, and lots of exercise. Kids are eating way too much sugar, and kids are not just getting enough activity. You know, mother used to say to me, go outside and run the energy out of you. Well, and kids aren't doing that today, so that makes the ADHD worse.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're so thrilled that in the studio right now we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be here.
We weren't here last week. You were ready and raring to go, but I had a blinding migraine, and I apologize that I wasn't here, and thrilled to have you here this week.
It's a pleasure.
You are the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and the director of the Autism Research Group as well.
That's correct.
Now, I do want to start out by saying that we had Angela Persicki with us yesterday, and she mentioned that you were having an event last night. And how did that go?
Oh, it went great. Yeah, so it's part of our, we have a series of workshops for parents that's just sort of outreach to the community. So last night I presented on challenging behavior and sort of practical tips for parents on how to address their child's challenging behavior. So it went great. We had a good turnout and lots of parent participation and questions and things like that. So it's something that we want to do sort of on a regular basis. I don't know how often we really have time to do it, but maybe once every quarter or so. And the workshops will be on a different topic each time.
And we were talking about this yesterday in the show, and I said to people, now if you're thinking, hey, darn it, I don't live in the Los Angeles area, this is of no use to me, I mentioned to them, well, Dr. Tarbox will be here tomorrow. You can ask your questions tomorrow, live and in real time. So hopefully any of you who were missing out, now is a great time. You can write in on www.autism-live.com. By the way, if you're watching a previously recorded version of this, somewhere down the road, Dr. Tarbox is with us most Fridays at the top of the second hour, whenever that is in your time zone. So we had a question that came in on Wednesday, and I saved it for today for you. My question is, my son is 4 years old and recently started ABA therapy part-time. My daughter is 5 years old and recently started kindergarten. When we sit down to dinner at the end of the day, my husband is very good about asking our daughter about her school day, what she learned, etc. However, he not only refuses to ask our son about his day, but he also changes the subject when his therapy comes up. My son, of course, does not understand why his dad is acting this way. I make sure to spend extra time each day listening to my son and asking about his experiences, but I don't know what I can do to improve the situation with his father and to help my husband become more comfortable and accepting with our new, since his diagnosis, reality. Help.
All right.
You know, a lot there. So would you like to start with talking about the dad, or would you like to start talking about the fact that he's having ABA therapy part-time?
Well, let's hit the part-time part first. I know that's not the main point of the question, but that'll be quick, and then we can get
But it jumped out at me. I'm sure it jumped out at you.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so each child is different, obviously, and we don't know this particular child, but the most scientifically proven treatment model for children with autism around the age of 4 is intensive one-on-one ABA lasting for at least 2 or more years. So really what the science shows is if your child is about 4, they should be getting really more like 30 to 40 hours per week of one-to-one treatment. And again, we don't know this particular child and their unique strengths and areas of need, but that is the proven model. So that would be something, the first thing that I might mention is what's the level of intensity, and if it's part-time, if it's fairly low, say a few hours a week or 10 hours a week, what's the reason for that? And if the reason for that is, if there's a good reason for it, then okay. But if the reason is, somebody says the kid doesn't really need it, or there's no funding for it, or there's too many other things going on, all of those would be, things to discuss, to think about really what's the priority here, and do we want to really start doing what we know from science is the most proven treatment approach, and really give that a shot for a year or two.
One of the things that you said a couple of weeks ago that has stuck with me so much was we were talking about the fact that it seems that with this insurance boon, I'm hearing a lot of parents who are saying, oh, we're getting 10 or 15 hours a week with 3 and 4-year-olds. And that the excuse that they're being told a lot of the times is, well, they're so high functioning, they just don't need more than that.
Right, and that's incorrect.
What I heard you say was that the research shows that giving the higher hours to those kids who have more skills is sometimes the best case scenario.
They actually get the best outcome from intensive treatment. Yeah, and the research isn't entirely clear on that yet. And so I'm not saying if your child is one of the lower functioning or kids who need more help that they also shouldn't have intensive services. We're not saying that, but I am saying the one existing study that really compared outcomes for kids with higher IQ to lower IQ, all of whom got really intensive services, were the kids with the kids who were less affected, the kids who were less severe, actually had a much larger response to treatment.
Right.
So if someone tells you, well, your kid's really high functioning, he's really verbal, he probably doesn't need the same level of intensity. If he's under the age of 5 or so, that statement is not supported by the science.
Okay.
It might be someone's opinion, okay, and they could even be right. It's possible, but it's not supported by scientific research.
Okay, so so that's the first thing that I wanted to address. Now, getting to the real question that they were wanting answered, a dad who is struggling in this moment for some acceptance. This is not a new story. We hear this story all the time.
Absolutely.
I myself, live with a fabulous man who struggled to be able to come to terms with what did this mean.
That's right.
And pretty much every parent that we have ever had come in and talk on this show talks about that fact that one parent or the other, the vast majority of the time, it's that the mom has taken action and that the dad is struggling to catch up. But that isn't always the case.
Right, not always.
But it's very rare that both parents went, oh, okay, autism, let's run and do this.
Right.
So the first thing that I want to say is, you're right on schedule.
Right, that's
You're not
normal.
alone.
Right.
This happens. It's not insurmountable. Right. It feels horrible in the moment. But, you are of the male persuasion. I sometimes think that you guys are a different species, but maybe you can help us to figure out, some strategies to help this dad based on some of the things that you've seen over the years.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to echo what you said, which is this kind of sort of disagreement or discord or different perspectives on, being a newly diagnosed family. Different perspectives between the mom and the dad is completely normal.
Yeah.
And I'd ask, I challenge you to come up with any major challenge in your life as a family where mom and dad are 100% on the same page for the whole thing. That never happens, right? It can't happen. And if it did happen, then you guys wouldn't be very good balance for each other. You'd just be the same person, right? So it's totally normal and totally expected that they're going to have different perspectives. And it's very common for one parent to really dive in headfirst and the other parent to pull back a little bit and be maybe more avoidant, maybe a little bit more in denial, maybe a little bit less accepting of the situation. Totally normal. The first thing that I'd say is the most important thing, and this is honestly to all married couples, is priority number one, take care of each other, right? Have empathy and think about what it's like to be in the other person's shoes. Because it's totally normal and very easy for me to say, I see the situation this way, and he should see the situation the same way I do, right? That's what we all do. That's our first reaction. And as it turns out, that doesn't work very well in a marriage, right? What actually works, if you want to have a functional, healthy marriage that's actually supportive of each other, what actually works is saying, I see it this way, standing in my shoes. He, over there, standing in his shoes with a different perspective and a different background, a different history, and different emotions, sees it a different way. And it's not about right or wrong, and it's not about who's the boss, and it's not about who wins or loses. It's about how can I support my spouse, and how can my spouse support me. So one practical step to take is to consider maybe sort of a division of labor type of thing. So in this case, it sounds like the mom's really gung-ho and she's really into it and she's about the therapy and she's going for it, and that's awesome. In some marriages, I've seen couples successfully do sort of a division of labor thing where maybe the dad is in charge of something else. And it's not that he has to be in denial, it's just that he's in charge of some other major aspect of the household that's really important and needs to be taken care of. And then that's something the mom doesn't have to worry about so much. And also then the mom doesn't have to really worry so much, how much is my husband involved in this? This is my job. That other thing is his job. Doesn't mean he doesn't care. Doesn't mean he's trying to avoid. It just means he's really good at this other stuff. I'm really good at this. And let's support each other by doing what we're good at and not being resentful.
And you know, we've seen this so many times, and I think about my personal circumstances with my husband, and I always think about Holly Robinson Peete came on the show and said, you know, how common this is, and that there came a day when she, you know, her husband, we call it the river in Egypt, denial, right? Floating on the river in Egypt syndrome. And that her husband, Rodney Peete, very well-known professional athlete, was in 68 kinds of denial. He was floating on that river. And it was frustrating for her because she felt the urgency, and that there came a day when she said, look, Rodney, I'm on Autism Street and you're over here floating on the river in Egypt, and we need to get together or you're going to be over there by yourself. And that the one thing that she says now that she regrets is she says, I wish I were more compassionate. I wish I knew the end of the story, which was that Rodney was going to get on my street. And that I could have just been a little bit more compassionate about the fact that he wasn't getting it in the same time span that I was.
Absolutely. And it's so easy within couple relationships to make the situation about ideas and resentment and perspectives and philosophies and worldviews and everything else, when really at the end of the day, what it's about on a daily basis is your behavior that you do with respect to one another. And so if there's something small that your husband can do that would be helpful for you, it's totally okay to ask for that. Not make a big deal out of it. It's not about him being in denial. It's just about, can you play with him for 10 minutes? Something that he would like to do. Not at the end of the world. What dad is going to say, no, I'm not going to play with my son, right? Whereas if you say, can't you get on this autism bandwagon? Can't you understand what's going on here? He's going to say, no, that's your perspective. My perspective's different. But can you play for 10 minutes? Can you go do the bills while I focus on getting my son's program together? Whatever, right? But, you know, pick a few small behaviors that are reasonable, and let's compromise and focus on what we can do today that can make, you know, everyone feel a little bit better today, rather than worrying about what it represents or what it means or what it, you know, it's not about all that. It's just about, let's get through today, supporting each other as much as possible.
Absolutely. It's hard not to get resentful. It's really hard not to get resentful. But I will tell you that something, because I was resentful for a while my husband took his time getting on the autism page. I was like, really? We got a lot to do, and I can use some help. How about a partnership? And then when he did get on the page, it was the worst possible day, and then it hit him when we had been taken off of 13 planes and had to drive 10 hours to get to the wedding we were going to get to, sat down to have a meal, and my husband burst into tears because that was the moment that he had the realization that he had a child on the autism spectrum and what that meant. And in that moment, as my child, who was like wrapped in a dish towel because our luggage was separated from us, right? And I was like, really, now? Now is the moment? And then I put on the compassionate face and said, okay, let's talk about it, let's deal with it, and, you know, and we're so much closer for it, right? But, you know, somebody said to me recently, a dad, and I wish I could remember which dad it was, said, you know, here's the thing. Men like to take care of. We're the hunter-gatherers. We want to provide for the family. And when we're presented with an equation that doesn't have an answer, we
don't know what to do.
Back up. And that they don't have anything to do with it, and they don't, because there's nothing to be done. And and I see this again and again and again, and I keep thinking about it, thinking, you know, there's a certain amount of sense of this. Until the dads see the progress that can be made with ABA therapy, that's when it kicks in. That's when the dads get on board and they go, okay, there's some action that can be taken. I will get more involved. But until then, the dads frequently don't see it.
And, you know, and again, if you make it concrete and you make it fairly simple, you're likely to get a better reaction. So instead of, you need to get with me and get on the same page so we can make a plan, maybe say something like, here's a list of reinforcers. Go to the store and buy them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, separate it.
Right?
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. And it's not about me nagging you or you having the same view as me.
Yeah.
It's about what can we actually do today.
Yeah. And even having the conversation, I know early on, I wanted to have a conversation with my husband about what should we do, what should we do, what should we do, and he couldn't do it. And eventually what I did sit down with him and say was, look, I did the research, and this is what we need to do, so this is the direction that I feel that we need to go in. I need your support in that. In that moment, he decided to ask a bunch of questions, and I said, if you want to go back and do the research, please do. I can't do that for you, but I did the research and I'm telling you, and now I need your support. And then he would go, okay, we're going to do that.
That's good advice.
It's tough. It's tough, but hang in there. And I love the idea of saying, could you go talk to him for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Because we don't want to have them not interact with the child.
Right, exactly. And maybe the dad doesn't want to talk about the kid's ABA therapy that day, but that doesn't mean that he wouldn't want to get down on the floor and play a game with them, or go play the video games with him, or go kick a ball in the backyard.
Absolutely. Toss a ball around. The thing that I want to say to you, though, too, is I think, and this is parent to parent, get that part-time over with. Get full-time, and I think that's going to help you in a couple of different ways. I suspect that if you get that full-time ABA program going, quality ABA program, then in a period of time your husband will start to get on board.
Sure.
So that's what I'm going to urge you to do, and write in and let us know how that all works for you. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with more of your questions for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to this special Science Beat segment with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. So thrilled to have him here. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're asking Dr. Tarbox your questions. Have another one that came in here talking about safety. They've got a 5-year-old with autism, intentionally falls down while playing all day. He loves to mimic cartoons with the characters are constantly falling down. He slams quite hard, and I worry about injuries. Tried lots of techniques. Nothing has worked so far. This has been happening for 2 years now. And wanting to also know advice. We've had a lot of people writing in about echolalia this week.
Okay.
And they want to know any advice for nonstop echolalia. But let's take the falling into things first.
Sure. So I guess the first thing I'd want to know is one of the main things that we do in ABA when we're going to treat a behavior problem. Before we do that is we sort of ask what's the impact that the behavior is having on the person's life, and if it needs to have a real significant impact across a variety of areas in order to prioritize it. And so I guess what I'd say here is he's been doing it for a couple of years. Has it actually had a negative outcome? Has he actually gotten hurt? Has he broken a bone, sprained an ankle, gotten a bruise? If the answer to that's no, I'd say in what other way is it hurting the kid's life, making the kid's life worse? And if there really isn't one, then I'd say maybe pick your battles. Maybe focus on something else. I mean, maybe he's just being really wacky and kind of ridiculous. You know, that's people get paid good money for that. Jim Carrey. You know? No, but not to make light of it. But you know.
Well, but you know, I think it's great that you're talking about it in terms of do we need to prioritize this?
Right.
I'm guessing since she took the time to write it in that it's a big concern for her, and she says, "I'm worried that he is going to hurt himself."
He's going to get hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so like any behavior then, you need to find a good replacement behavior that serves the same function. And so, of course, we don't know the kid, we don't know the behavior, but I'm guessing it just produces its own reinforcement. It's probably just fun to do, right? She's saying he imitates cartoons and all that.
Yeah.
So the best strategy then is going to be to find an alternative replacement behavior that he has just as much fun doing that's safer. So I don't have any great suggestions, but anything, riding a bike, kicking a ball, roughhousing with friends even in a safe area, climbing on play gyms, play structures, things like that. All of those might produce some of the same sort of physical fun aspects to it, but not be quite as dangerous. Another thing is just good old-fashioned reinforcement. We found with some kids who are playing on playgrounds in kind of a dangerous way, we just reward them if they don't. We say, yeah, go ahead and play on the playground, but just don't do X, Y, and Z. Like don't climb up the slide or don't jump off the structure or whatever the dangerous behaviors are. If you go and play for 5 minutes and you don't do any of those dangerous behaviors, come back and you get a reward.
Yeah. It's amazing as I think about this because, you know, I'm thinking about Jem, that Jem used to do a little thing where he would act out whatever movie we were watching. And he loved in the movie about the Christmas train, the Polar Express.
Polar Express.
Where the train stops. And he would do this thing where he would fling himself across the room when the train stopped, right? And what happened when he did that is we'd all laugh.
Right.
And so I think there was an element of it that was really enjoyable to him because he was flying through space and hitting on the carpet. He didn't really hurt himself, and he made people laugh, and that became... So we went through a little bit of a phase, too, where, and sometimes still, he has a tendency, and he doesn't know how to physically approach people. He wants physical contact, but he doesn't always know how to do that, so he'll lean on to people, you know? And sometimes he gets a great reaction for it, and he hasn't gotten enough negative. He's starting to now. 5th grade and he's big, people go, hey, what are you doing? You know, so it's starting to curtail it. But you know, so many different reasons why this might be exciting to your individual child, and it brings up, and we always say this on the show, that you know, there's no, and you've said it, you just said it, there's no way of knowing what exactly the paycheck is via this format, but I think it would be, wouldn't it be really helpful if they did know what the paycheck is?
Absolutely, it's critical. So if it really is a concern and it's going to produce a negative outcome for this child, then they need to seek the help of a professional who's trained to treat challenging behaviors.
Yeah, and then you absolutely are going to be able to curtail it. You'll find you'll find a solution for it, as you said, finding something else that gives the paycheck. Yeah,
that's right.
In terms of the echolalia now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. This is a tough one.
Yes.
And so are people asking about like scripting, like video scripting?
We've had a little bit of everything this week. People talking about a child who sometimes appropriately will just respond with something movie talk.
Okay.
And other times kids who are just doing like vocal stereotypy, making noises endlessly. Kids who are just repeating one phrase over and over again on a loop that, you know, where the parents are just like, I'm going to wreck the car if they don't stop, right?
Yeah.
Because, and I know I've been there before where it's like, even now, my son will sometimes just start doing something or say something, like he'll make a noise and he'll think it's great. And he's at a point now where I can say, okay, Mom has reached her limit now. And he goes, oh, all right. You know, but there were times when he was 3 where I thought, I'm going to have to step outside. Or take up drinking.
Because it's so
or something because I'm not going to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I don't know which type, but they're saying non-stop echolalia.
Okay, so that's a tough one. Again, it does kind of go back to the same basic answer that we always have, which is you can't make a behavior go away. You have to replace it with something else that still gets the kid what he wants, right? And so if it's automatically reinforced, like self-stimulatory echolalia or scripting, which it likely is, most research actually has shown that most repetitive behaviors done by children with autism are self-stimulatory. However, not all of them, right? So you still need to go through the process of doing a functional assessment to figure out why your child's doing it. It's not something that most parents can do on their own. Generally, you need the help of an ABA provider. So you do that, and if it is because it's producing its own reinforcement or self-stimulatory, then you need to provide something else for the child that will produce self-stimulatory reinforcement that he'll like just as much, but that is less socially inappropriate. So for example, if he likes listening to the sound of himself script videos, then listening to videos or music on a Walkman might produce kind of the same thing. And it might be easier to encourage him to have a quiet voice while he does that because he's getting the input that he wants through the earphones. That's, you know, one option. There's a lot of options. But listening to music, the number one thing, though, quite honestly, is when we really see these behaviors go away is when we're increasing other behaviors that just happen on a regular basis and take the place of it. So, like conversational skills would really be great. Even if it's not complex conversational skills like sentences, if you just have the kid talking and vocalizing about stuff in the environment that's appropriate, even just noticing stuff. Look, it's a car. That's better than scripting, right? And you reinforce it heavily. But that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of teaching. Honestly, this type of stereotypy is one of the very last things that we see successfully decrease. We might, make huge gains in language, huge gains in social skills, play skills, decreases in other challenging behavior, and still these complex forms of stereotypy linger sometimes for a year or two before we really see a real big reduction.
So patience.
Definitely patience.
Patience.
But don't focus on the negative. Always focus on the positive. Not how can I get my kid to stop doing X, it's how can I get my kid to start doing these other 5 behaviors instead.
That would compete with it. Yeah, because just as you were saying that, I was thinking, for the child who's going, saying dog, 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 dog all over it, over and over and over again, and you say to the child, do you want a cookie? Say cookie. Now, if they really want the cookie, they got to stop saying dog to say cookie to get the cookie.
Exactly.
And interrupting because they can't do both at the same time. Makes a certain amount of sense. We're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to come back to continue with more of your questions for Dr. Tarbox. We still have time if somebody wants to write in a question on the live feature, so stick with us.
Just go like this. Can you see me? Puedes mirarme aquí? Okay. Hi, I'm Rebecca Ishida. Say hi, Ethan. Hi. My son was diagnosed with autism in November 2004. With Ethan, almost immediately, we noticed things that were troublesome, that he just didn't sleep. He would vomit in the crib. There were a lot of sensory issues.
Then he'd have like 20 of the trains lined up, and if you came in and took one train out, just meltdown completely.
Guttural instinct is to think that there's nothing wrong. Who wants to look at their child and go, there's something wrong with that child? You don't. You always want to see the best in your child.
Will my kid be able to go to school? Will he interact with his peers? Will he be able to have a healthy relationship? Will he get married? I really thought that autism was like a death sentence. A lot of hope was given to me through CARD. This was my 3rd agency and the best agency we had. And there was no way in the world I was going to give up CARD because of the gains I saw Ethan was having.
Yeah, you did it!
And I remember when Doreen saw us for the evaluation, she says, but by the time he's 6, he will be.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us in the studio right now Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Always a thrill to have you here.
Thank you.
We had a question that came in. I'm curious as to your answer. When is the earliest that autism can be diagnosed?
All right, and anytime that something isn't really exactly an area of my expertise, I like to disclose that right up front. So I'm a doctoral level behavior analyst, a behavior doctor, not a psychologist, not a licensed psychologist. So I don't do diagnosis, and I'm not an expert in diagnosis. However, I've been around for a while, and I'm colleagues with experts like Doreen and other people. So I can give some thoughts on this. And I am familiar with some of the research. Traditionally, it used to be that really a kid couldn't get a diagnosis of autism until about age 3. And anything before that, a psychologist or a medical doctor was very hesitant to diagnose them because they weren't really sure, right, until about age 3. Well, as it turns out, we know age 3 really isn't early intervention anymore. We want early intervention. So we know it's critical to get the kid diagnosed as early as possible. So now when we see a 3-year-old kid, honestly, we don't even think of them as a really young kid anymore. When they come in at 3, that's kind of maybe standard. We're really looking for earlier. Kids do get diagnosed down to about age 2 now, maybe, is the very, very youngest. But again, it totally depends on the doctor, and it totally depends on the psychologist. And what their expertise is and their level of comfort. I honestly think a lot of these folks are basically afraid of getting criticized by other people. So even if they know it's the right thing to do to diagnose the child earlier, they won't do it because they're afraid of being criticized. There's a few kind of semi-evil situations where there's funding providers that don't want to pay for treatment, and so they actually don't want the kid to get the diagnosis until they're older, so they don't have to pay for as much treatment. And or some funding providers don't even fund treatment after 3. So they don't want the kid to get diagnosed before 3 because then they're going to have to fund treatment, right? So they delay as much as possible. And we hear of cases of kids getting diagnosed 1 month before their 3rd birthday, so they get 1 month of treatment and then they're done. I mean, it's criminal. But in any case, so assuming that you have a well-trained psychologist or medical doctor who is familiar with the research, has been diagnosing for a long time, and has does a good, adequate assessment of the child's functioning. So interviews the parents, directly observes the child, gets a good case history. We're seeing diagnoses younger and younger, and really down to about age 2, but really honestly we're able to get what are sometimes called provisional diagnoses of autism all the way down to age maybe 12 months, 12 to 14 months. And so we're getting these kids who a lot of times it's their older sibling that already has a confirmed diagnosis, so we know they have the genetic susceptibility, and they're already showing symptoms of developmental derailment, right? So they're not doing eye contact, they're not responding to name, they might not be interested socially, they might be doing even more repetitive behavior than is typical for normal infants, because typically developing babies have repetitive behavior all the time. That's perfectly normal, right? But children who are developing autism sometimes will have even more than is typical, so it's detectable. So sometimes we'll get these kids as young as 12 months. They'll call it a provisional diagnosis of autism, or at high risk for autism, right? And so they'll come up with some other name for it that won't get them in trouble if it turns out that they were wrong, right? Which, fine, we'll take it, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
There may not be any funding for treatment if you don't have a clear-cut diagnosis, though, right? But by hook or by crook, the family members figure out how to get their kid into treatment as early as possible.
Because that's the key.
Yeah,
that's the key. If your child is delayed, if your child is behind, get them the treatment.
That's right.
And sometimes you just need the diagnosis to be able to have access to the funding, but it's really about getting them access to the treatment.
Right, and a good quality ABA program, all it's about is figuring out which skills are not being developed that should be, and teach those skills.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So even if the child, worst case scenario, maybe you were being overly paranoid, and maybe the child wouldn't have developed full-blown autism and was just developmentally delayed a little bit, no problem. The ABA program catches up their development, and they don't need it anymore, and they're done.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Whereas, there's plenty of cases where, that child probably would have developed full-blown autism, but we get them early enough, and we do the treatment intensively enough to where we get them out as quickly as possible, and in many cases they're doing completely fine.
Yes, get there ahead.
Yep.
An amazing way to look at things. Now we've got a research-related question, and they have said, with some unknowns, of course, so they're giving you the disclaimer firsthand, what is a rough estimate in % for a mild PDD-NOS kid diagnosed at 2 to recover by the time he starts school?
Right, okay.
And they wrote some more. This individual has strong interaction, joint attention, spontaneous speech, loves to play with peers with minimal stimming at the current age of 3. His main issue is repetitive speech and some echoing scripting. The doctor said his repetitive speech is mild, and both the doctor and his preschool said we do not need to worry about his cognition. Very affectionate and sensitive to others' emotions.
Okay, so I'll give a short answer and a long answer.
Okay.
The short answer is we don't know.
Okay.
Okay. But the long answer is, and it is worth discussing some more details, is there is some research on predictors of recovery, okay? And predictors of optimal outcome. And actually what she's describing is all good. So things like joint attention, which means basically wanting to share your experiences with other people, having some vocal speech, things like imitating, Actually, even having some vocal stereotypy has actually been shown to be good because it shows that the kid's able to vocalize a lot, and a lot of what we teach is vocalization, right?
Right.
It's what language is made out of for kids who end up being vocal. So all of that is good, right? So those are all positive things, and you know, starting as early as possible is positive. PDD-NOS versus full-blown autism, there's one study to suggest that might be more likely to produce recovery.
Okay.
All that being said, we don't know.
Okay.
So any given child could have everything looking right on paper and still may not recover. Will make lots of progress and will become much more independent than they would have been without treatment, but may still not fully recover. Whereas another child who doesn't have any of those things going for him and even starts late still ends up fully recovering sometimes.
Right.
So we really honestly don't know. There's other things going on that the parent doesn't have access to right now that we just don't know. So there's probably some genetic susceptibilities that affect the child's chance of recovery. There's probably some biological, physiological things going on in the brain or who knows where else in the immune system that affect the chances of the child's recovery. And the fact is, scientifically, we just don't know right now.
But we do know that all kids can make progress.
That's
and
absolutely
that progress
right.
has to really be the watchword. And if this parent were sitting in a place where they want to make it the most likely, the best possible outcome for this individual child, what we do know is the best window to create that is 30 to 40 hours of ABA therapy from a quality ABA provider.
That's exactly right. Continuing for 2 or more years.
Okay.
Okay, and starting as young as possible.
Well, the child is 3, so still in that window.
Right.
And you shoot for the stars, and you see the progress along the way.
That's right. And the thing is it's not that we're shooting for recovery, and if we don't hit recovery, we failed in some way. That's not what ABA is about. ABA is about maximizing skill development.
Yeah.
So whether that adds up to recovery, great. But even if it adds up to, a few inches short or a mile short of recovery, whatever, you've maximized your child's skill development. What could be better than that, right? It's about that.
Yes. Now, when my child was 3, if you had said that to me, I would have said, yeah, I'm not really interested in that. I want to set him up for recovery. There's that saying about when you're going after Moby Dick, pack the tartar sauce.
Right.
And I got the tartar sauce. I had the tartar, literally a jar of tartar sauce, and I was like, we're going for recovery. Now, my son has not yet recovered, and I got to tell you that while I still, think that that's a real possibility for him, I have a different view of it now because he's come so far.
Right.
And if I could go back and talk to myself when he was 3 and say, why don't we have the goal in mind that he not have obstacles in his way because of autism?
That's right.
But what motivated me when he was 3 was I want to be able to look him in the eye and say we did everything that we could.
That's exactly right.
And so,
another analogy is Olympic athletes.
Yeah.
Not every athlete is going to get a gold medal. In fact, almost none of them are, right? 1% of 1% or something like that. But you're gosh darn right if you say that every single one is going to aim for that, right? Every single one is going to train the hardest and put in the hours, and that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So your first few years with your child in an ABA program, basically you don't have a life. Your life is make that happen as much as possible. Maximize your child's learning. Do everything you can in your off hours when the therapists are not there. Do everything you can to help with generalization and maintenance of your child's skills.
Absolutely.
And maybe recover, maybe not. You don't know, but you will give your child the best tools you possibly can and give them the best shot you possibly can at being as independent and as capable of self-determination as possible.
Yeah, there's a series that they do here that we feature from time to time. It's called Mission Possible. And my son is one of the kids featured in this series because that's the crux of it. It's it's what's possible, and that there's so much that's possible and the progress is so much. It isn't a series that just features kids who've recovered.
No, of course not.
But it's kids who've made progress, and the stories, their stories and their parents' stories of what they went through emotionally and financially and physically to get to that point. And so if you're looking for some inspiration, those are called Mission Possible.
Yeah, those are great
Portraits of Hope.
Yeah.
They're very we're pretty much out of time here. And we were realizing, I was telling Dr. Tarbox that we won't be doing shows next Friday, and apparently we won't be doing shows the next 2 Fridays. I hadn't looked at the calendar. So we will see you back again in 3 weeks,
All
and
right.
we'll look forward to
here.
that. I'm going to remind everybody that we won't be here on Monday. It's a short week for us next week. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we'll be doing live shows. And on Tuesday, we've already got some great guests. We've got some people coming in from Autism Society of Los Angeles who are going to be talking about that self-determination bill. Matt Asner from Autism Speaks will be coming back on Tuesday. So we will have him here as well. And of course, on Wednesday, don't forget that Dr. Doreen, Ask Dr. Doreen, will be on Wednesday morning. So all of that and all of your questions happening next week. And some very exciting, we're going to be featuring biomedical next week. So we'll have some very exciting doctors talking about some of the other perspectives of making sure that our kids are healthy so that we can maximize our results with ABA. So that will be a very exciting week. I'm really looking forward to some of the different people that we will have on, and more on that on Tuesday. As we end the week, I always like to take just a millisecond to remind all of you that you're doing an awesome job, and how proud I am of all of you, and how grateful and privileged I feel to be sharing our journeys together, and how much that means to me personally. I'm going to get all the clamped here in the last 30 seconds. In any case, we will be back on Tuesday. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. We'll see you again on Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.